What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I am so excited today because my guest is a dear, dear friend of mine. We've known each other a very long time, and we are both so like-minded about the complex sale and landing huge deals, or better known as whale hunting. My good friend, Barbara Weaver Smith, is the consummate expert on whale hunting, and I'm excited that today we're going to get to talk about whale hunting for at least 30 or 40 minutes, one of our favorite topics. Barbara is not only an expert in whale hunting, she is also written two books, The Whale Hunters and Whale Hunting with Global Accounts. So those are two books you can pick up. We'll talk some more about those later. And Barbara does consult companies on whale hunting, but she's got a new project that she's launching that we're going to be talking about as well. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thanks, Alice. I'm so happy to be with you. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Yeah, me too, because we get to just talk about our favorite things. So,
Yeah.
gosh, let's just dive right into whale hunting, and let's start by let's set the scene. What is whale hunting and why is it important to companies?
Whale hunting is a complete process for scouting, hunting, and harvesting large accounts. And we talk about a whale as being a customer that could give you a deal that's 10 times to 20 times bigger than your current average deal. So I work with CEOs, they're the ones that hire me. Because the process doesn't work if it's not started at the top and completely supported by the CEO. That's an important feature of it. It's loosely based on the way the Inuit people hunted whales, and we use their ancient wisdom for our modern business in our process.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. If the CEO is not going to be involved, whale hunting is not going to work at your company. Selling is a team sport. Everyone who listens to me hears me say that all the time. There are a
I
lot of
couldn't
people
agree
out there,
more.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, come on. There's no such thing as the lone wolf, salesperson out there winning the day. I don't know if there ever really was, but
Not in complex sales, there isn't. No, in large sales, no.
no, not in
No.
the complex sale. It
Mhm.
takes an entire team. It takes
Mhm.
the salesperson as orchestrator. It takes some subject matter experts, some customer success people. It takes some senior leaders to be involved and positioned appropriately at the right levels. And many times it takes the CEO in a complex sale. But when we're whale hunting, it absolutely includes the
Yeah,
CEO and the senior
yeah,
leaders.
right. So that's what we teach in a company. We help them introduce a process that first of all helps them identify the criteria for their ideal clients, that we call that the target filter. And then they have usually what the people that we call scouts who are doing the research and identifying the targets, they are not the salespeople. Salespeople don't like to do that part. So we have people who are, they might be marketing people, or if you have a sales enablement program, those people would do it, or admin people can do it. But they're the ones that work with the metrics and they look out in the marketplace, use databases, and they find lists of companies that would be ideal for you. They score them. And we teach all of this. And then they begin to hand them off to the salespeople. Now, as you said, you have all my information you already reported that there when you're going after big accounts, you're going up against big competition too. They have dedicated sales teams who only sell. They don't do anything else. And they have sales engineers and estimators and people to write the proposals. But a smaller or mid-sized company typically doesn't have all those resources. So as you said, you need subject matter experts involved in order to fulfill those roles. That also gives you a huge advantage because you can introduce the people who are going to do the work. And the big companies can't do that. They don't even know who's going to do the work until they make the sale. So it's a huge advantage for small companies really to be able to really understand how to sell as a team and how that works. And it means you can't have silos. You have to have real close relationships across all the areas or divisions of your company. Because if a salesperson needs a couple of SMEs to be part of a meeting, then whoever those SMEs work for, they have to be cool with that. You can't have interference when that
Right.
happens.
Right. Well, we can't have a sales prevention department, that's for sure. And that's
Right.
what happens a lot of times. So,
Yeah.
we know that whale hunting is going after really large accounts that would be very ideal, right? And
Right.
most SMBs, small and mid-sized companies, have a couple of whales, but
Mhm.
most of them would like to get some more,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so what are some things, first of all, why is it important to have a few whales to balance
Mhm.
out your portfolio of customers? And then what are some important things to remember if you're going to now go out whale hunting?
Mhm. Well, why it's important is that getting large accounts in your portfolio is the best, safest, and probably least expensive way to grow your business. If you have a product or service or combination that big companies can use, if you get one big company and you understand strategically how to move in that company from area to area or division to division or country to country, which is what my second book is about, you can do a lifetime of business with that one customer. That's where SMBs kind of usually fall short, which is why I wrote the second book. They'll get a large account, but it's like one piece of it. I use the example of Caterpillar. They own 789 companies. So you could spend your whole life and all your business working for Caterpillar, as an example. Of course, that's not what you want to do. But when you get a big account, you really want to learn strategically how to move up in that account and have how to move across all the areas, which is another big feature of whale hunting.
Yeah. So people, companies want to do this and they have done it, sometimes inadvertently landed a whale, right?
Right. Usually
Um,
that's how the first couple happen.
a couple have.
We got this, but we really don't know how.
Exactly.
Now
And
we
now,
want to do it again, but we don't remember how that
right,
happened.
how do we do it? So we want to be deliberate about it and put
Yeah,
all the right pieces in place. And we're going to get to
sure.
that a bit in a moment.
Yeah.
But before we do, I want to talk about something you and I have talked about many times in the past,
Okay.
which is why it's so hard to land whales. For example, when we're a smaller company, maybe we're in that 80 to 100 million range
Mhm.
and we're selling to companies that are 100 to 1,000 times our own size, right?
Mm.
We are, you know, just tiny compared to them. And there's a lot of risk involved with a large company buying from a company our size. So
Right.
let's talk about that because I think it's one of the most important things that
Yeah.
people just miss. They don't really recognize what a risk it is, and they don't take the steps to mitigate.
Right. Well, we call it whale fears and fear busters. We know that smaller companies are afraid of the big companies, but you probably don't know or think about they're more afraid of you. They buy from other big companies because it's not a risk. If they know the brand, they know the name, they know the financial status. It's easy to get all that information because they're public. They don't know all that about you. In fact, they may not know any of that about you. So most of the deals they make with other big customers, they make out of fear or to mitigate risk. Where they need small companies, where you have the advantage is flexibility, agility, speed to market, innovation, all kinds of things you have that they need that they can't get anywhere else. But they will not buy your advantages unless you mitigate the risks. So we talk about fear busters, and how we work with customers is have everybody Make a list of what are all the ways that a whale might be afraid of your company specifically. Suppose you're going into a new industry or a new market, they're horrified about that. They are afraid of more work. They're afraid of internal conflict. They're afraid of change to begin with. And mostly they're afraid of making a mistake. So we encourage you to identify all the risks and then create for yourselves and your sales team a set of materials or other tangible things that mitigate each risk. It might be a process diagram. It might be bios of your team. It might be testimonials, case studies, things like that. It includes what does your website look like? How do all your people look on LinkedIn? That kind of thing. It's very comprehensive and ways to mitigate those fears. Now, most of the time, the buyers don't tell you what they're afraid of. They're just, or they're really interested, but there are these things in the background that you aren't bringing out. So if you have fear busters, you can say you have a process chart. Well, a lot of our customers are worried about how are we going to onboard them. So we want to present this detailed onboarding plan that
Mm.
we've created so that we do a really good job of getting started with you. That's a fear mitigator because that's the kind of thing a big company already has. And also, it improves your delivery because you really need to have that inside. And most of our customers don't have it yet, and we help them
Absolutely.
create it. So that's a great example of a fear buster. That anything like that that shows them that you are like them or that you understand how they operate because they operate totally differently from
Yeah, and
how we operate.
let's talk about one of the fears that you haven't mentioned yet, which is the financial fears that big companies
Absolutely.
have about
Yeah,
small companies
right. Well, big companies notoriously don't pay very fast. If they can hold an invoice for 90 days, they will.
or
So they're
longer.
yeah, so they're afraid that you can't float your business with them for 90 days or all your business. One of the ways we recommend that people mitigate that and deal with it is get a letter from your banker that says, should you land this engagement, here's the line of credit that they will advance and bring that forward. As a privately held company, which I know many of you are, you don't have to produce financials for anybody. But we always say it's very smart to produce your financials or at least some version of them, including if you have a letter of commitment from the bank. That's really, really important. And that will be a huge advantage. You have no idea how positively they respond to that and your willingness to bring that forward and your initiative to bring it forward, understanding that they worry about that. They don't want to put you out of business. And some
Right.
of them who are very knowledgeable are very careful about not doing that.
Absolutely, and really that's it. They don't wanna cause you any harm. I mean,
Right.
it is when you start with a big company, it is frightening sometimes. They're going to take you said 90, I've seen 120 days,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes,
And
sure.
for a
Yeah.
small company to put out that capital in advance to do whatever it
Right.
is that needs to be done,
Exactly.
whether it's
Yeah.
a product or a service, it still costs
Right.
money to make it
Sure,
happen
because
before
it's time.
time.
Yeah.
Right, right. So I think that's a great explanation and really something every company who wants to land more humongous deals has to
Mhm.
think about. How do
Right.
we mitigate the risk? Don't wait until you're in the middle of it to do
Yeah.
that. This is a
Right.
preparation piece before you
Absolutely. Yeah.
even go out and target,
Yeah.
who you're going to
Yeah.
go after.
That's
Get
so
get
true.
it
Yeah.
set up, right? Get it
Yeah.
all figured
Yeah.
out first. And
And
then
yeah,
release my
it's
rebellious
your
slave.
own risk too,
Yeah, yeah,
because you will have to wait for that first invoice to be paid, and it's painful. It's a painful, painful wait. The people that you're working with have no idea that that's happening. So they're not picking on you. They also can't do anything about it.
right,
You have to take that on yourself. Be prepared. Work with your banker so that you can get past those first days. Now, once you get your first invoice, likely you'll get all of them on time after that, most of the time. But you have to have a backup plan, especially if you're
right.
adding people to do this job.
Yep.
I think having whales in your portfolio is a fantastic way to grow your business, the best way. Many of my clients have started with smaller companies and they keep moving up, they keep moving up. And some of the smaller ones fall away. Partly it's because as you grow your business, you're getting more capable. Your team is more sophisticated and more capable every day, and you will outgrow some of the clients that you have already, some of the customers that you have now, and you'll be wanting more challenging customers who will pay you a whole lot more to do what you do. So once
Absolutely.
you get over that initial investment, it's a huge advantage to you.
Yeah. And I think too, for companies who are more mature and the CEOs are starting to think about their exit, the
Sure.
investors love to see this balance in your customer portfolio,
Right,
right?
right,
They wanna see those long-term, middle-sized companies that stay with you and keep
right.
growing with you. They wanna see some of the larger companies who've continued to grow, and then they need to see a couple of whales, right? And
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 they
probably more than
yeah,
2, right?
they also need to see that you have this process.
Yeah.
That you have a process, a system to get to locate and sell to those companies and bring them home and continue to sell to them because that's the only way they believe that other people can do it when you leave.
Right, that's right, and that is a big thing that
Yeah,
a buyer is always gonna wonder, can we right? They
right.
wanna know, can we operate this without the CEO, right, the founder?
Absolutely.
Can
Yeah.
the people, do the things we're gonna need them to do? Do they have the skills to do this when the CEO
Mhm.
is gone?
Yeah,
And so it is really important to have a process in place, which
yeah,
is what your company is all about.
yeah.
All right, so we've got some skill sets that we need. I want to talk about some of those specific skill sets. And I think I want to start really with the targeting because there's nothing worse than having a team ready to go, but they're going after the wrong types of
Absolutely.
accounts. So
Yeah,
let's start there and kind of
yeah.
talk about how we need to make sure these will be the best possible companies for you to land as whales before we move on to some of the other skills needed.
Well, first of all, think about what do you think would be the characteristics of a bigger company? And I always like to say, pick a geography to begin with, uh, pick an industry to begin with, and a geography if you can, where you can begin to build your brand and build your recognition. That way, you get more power out of each new logo that you bring in rather than like going to the East Coast and the West Coast or going to Australia and the UK, for example, at the same time. That stretches your resources and it doesn't give you really any brand power in those areas. So those are a couple of criteria. Then think about what's the size of the company that your service would be suited to, what industry or industries could use it, and those are other criteria. And then first we list the criteria that we want to know about. The size of the company, the number of employees might be important to you. Uh, Whether they're growing, are they financially stable, all of those kinds of things. You can make a list and then we do metrics: ideal, good, minimum acceptable. Your
Mm,
most important criterion is not 0, it's minimum acceptable. So if you'd like to have a company that's say $500 million in revenue, which would be a high end of a mid-sized company, low end of a big company. And what's the lowest whale that you would consider? Well, the lowest might be 350 million. If you want $1 billion company, the lowest might be a half a billion. Look at it like that. You have to have a range and you don't want the bottom to be 0. Once you've done that, you can start with LinkedIn or you can go to, I use DBS Hoover's all the time for that kind of research because they're very detailed at it. You can just drop in all those criteria. And there are many services that do that. You can also do it in a library, but it's worth paying a little bit to get that information.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. There's
yeah,
tons of, companies out there like Zoom
mhm,
Info and
right, right.
B&B Hoovers and many others but you do need to do the deep research. And I know you really recommend that people use a dossier and that
Yes,
they
absolutely.
actually collect certain pieces of information and get it all in one place. Let's talk about that.
Yes, well, it's really important before you let anybody go in, before you permit any salesperson to go in to talk to a company like this, that first of all, the sales leader, and to whatever extent you're the sales leader, you want to know that's going to happen. Because you can really blow a first attempt if somebody's not prepared. So they need to know everything that's important about this company and about the first people that they're going to attempt to talk to. This is where CEOs can be hugely helpful because you have big networks. And if you can call on your network to get an introduction to a senior level person or even a mid level person at that company, huge advantage to go in with an intro rather than any kind of cold outreach. The other thing is the first person in or the first team in the door, they have to offer something of value. They have to bring an idea, a concept, an example, a case study, something from another industry, something that's new that the people might not know yet, some kind of like gift offering of information and knowledge that you can bring to the
Right.
table
And if
long
you're
before you start talking about a sale.
Yeah, if your team hasn't done the research, they have no idea what would be
Right,
valuable, right?
right,
Because included in this research is really the history of the company, their major markets, their major competitors, what they're focused on for the year. Usually,
right,
you're going after these whales, they're public companies. You can get their
right.
10K and their annual
Their
report.
10K, exactly.
You can
Yeah,
know everything. You can know the president's message, what the president thinks is important, and you can use all of that in your approach messaging
right.
so that they say, "Oh, they know us. How did they know that about us?" Well, it was easy. We just read your
Exactly.
10K,
Yeah,
but guess what? The other sellers didn't. So,
right.
we're ahead of the game.
And that makes them feel right out of the gate, you chose them.
Yes.
You know, because you believe they're among the ones that really could benefit from what you have to offer. But the idea that you pick them out because you have a set of criteria and they fulfill it perfectly. I can't tell you how many times I've said that to a prospect and they just beam, like you took the time to do that. I had another CEO tell me first, this is about business acumen, the first time he interviews a salesperson, he always asks them a question about EBITDA. And if they say, "What's that?" he doesn't talk to them anymore.
Yeah,
So they
exactly,
have to
right?
be savvy about the business because you guys know, CEOs, you're not really interested in what the little gadgets do. You're interested in, is there something that's going to impact your business, your bottom line, or your opportunity, or one of your business objectives? And if it doesn't come to you couched in that language, you're probably not very interested.
Right. It's either gotta impact my bottom line, my top
Right.
line, right? It's gotta make
Yeah.
me faster, better, gotta
Right.
make something easier, gotta make me more
More efficient.
productive, more
Right.
profitable,
Right. Yeah.
cut my costs. It's gotta do
Yeah.
something real and tangible for me. So,
Yeah.
if we don't know the companies well enough, we're not going to be able to have the right approach. So, this is
Right.
why I love when the teams do the dossier, then they get together and, the
Right.
CEO and the senior leaders and the
Mhm.
sellers and the
Yeah.
SMEs, the subject matter experts and the customer success
Mhm.
people, whoever needs to be at that meeting. It's a lot of people.
That's
And then
right.
you talk about it, right? And you
Yeah.
talk about the company. Oh, you know what else I heard? And you know what I saw they
Mm.
posted on LinkedIn the other day?
Yeah.
And I found someone I know who works there, not in the exact department, but maybe I can get an introduction. And you can start to really, when build on it,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And talk
Yeah.
about it. And what's amazing to me, Barbara, is that when we do it this way, how easy it becomes to gain entry because
Yeah.
inevitably somebody knows somebody, but we never would have
Exactly.
known that if we hadn't had the conversation. And
Right.
I have a
Right.
real story of this that a client that you worked on with me quite some time ago, but the CEO was sitting on a connection with a VP for a whale that the team was working on.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I mean, we had done some work, but I think the CEO wasn't there that day or whatever. And so he came into the meeting and we were going over the dossier and we were specifically talking about all the people, right? And he
Yeah.
goes, "Oh, I went to school with that guy."
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
all of a
That's
sudden,
how it happens. Yeah.
we all exhaled because we had been trying and trying to get in and could not get any appointments set. And now the CEO has, his Rolodex, and here's this person
Yeah.
he's known forever and can just pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
So we should not overlook the power of those networks, your own team, your own board,
Right.
the other
Yeah.
CEOs that you're in CEO groups with. These people can
Exactly.
all help you gain entry, but they
Yeah.
won't do it if they don't think you're smart or prepared because they don't
Right.
want to be embarrassed, right? They don't want to
Yeah.
introduce you and
Right.
make a fool of it or whatever.
Exactly. And they won't think of you unless you tell them. I always
Exactly.
keep a list, or these are people who I want to meet. And when I meet somebody that might know them, I always ask. And usually I can get an introduction. And
Yeah.
another important role for the CEO, I believe, is helping the executive team train the salespeople in business acumen,
Yes.
because many salespeople are very, very good at talking about their product and service, but they may be uncomfortable figuring out what are the real interests that the prospects have. Even if they've been to B school, they might really not understand how that works in the
They
real
don't.
world. So lunch and learns, bring your
Yeah.
CFO in and the CIO and yourself, and just talk about how do people like you think about
Yes.
their
Yeah, it's
business.
a day in the life of, right, Barbara? I mean,
Yeah,
these younger salespeople and even some of the more mature ones, if
yeah,
they're calling on a CTO, a COO, a VP,
yeah,
a CEO for the first time, they don't know what a day in their life is like.
that's
They
right.
don't know
Absolutely.
what makes
Yeah,
them, wonder and think, and they've
yeah,
gotta know how that brain works, but you bring
yeah,
your own CEO, your own CTO, your own
yeah,
COO, VPs, and say, "Okay, ask me questions, talk to me.
right.
I'll tell you what
I
I'm thinking."
I always like to ask them, how do you respond to salespeople that are talking to you? You know, what makes you willing to engage, and
Right.
what makes you wanna walk away? What
Yeah.
makes you not take the next meeting?
And
Because
that a lot of
you
what
can
makes
all
them not.
answer those questions that your
Yeah,
salespeople really need to be thinking about, because
absolutely.
I think we're doing a good job in sales training generally of helping salespeople to really focus on the customer, but they're more likely to be focused on that company rather than the individuals in it. And they need to be thinking about each individual that they talk to, what's on their mind, what are their expectations. And the higher level you can go in the company to do that, the better you are as a salesperson. And nobody can teach them like than their own leadership team.
Oh, absolutely, and it's so important and so often missed. It's so funny, Barbara, when I recommend it to, CEOs, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even think of that." Of course, we can have our senior people talk to our
Yeah,
salespeople,
yeah,
we can set up
yeah,
a panel and, yeah,
right,
we can interview them and ask them questions, and we
sure,
can let our salespeople practice with them. Sure, it takes time, but my goodness, it's so, so, so worthwhile.
yeah, absolutely.
So important. So that dossier is the first piece that after you've targeted, you know who you're
Mhm,
going after, you gather all that information, you get your team together, you all
mhm,
talk about it, you
yeah,
figure out who you know, and you
right,
get your approach ready. And best of all, if you can get an introduction, right? Do
right,
that first
yeah,
before you go in
yeah,
cold, right?
mhm,
So
absolutely,
now we're into it. We've got a whale,
right,
right? And
right, yeah,
somebody from that whale talked to us.
yeah,
And now what do we do? How do we proceed to
yeah,
help guide them? Because it's different when we have two, three, four buyers at a company that's similar size to us or just a little bigger. That's very different than now. I'm at this company that's a multi-billion-dollar company. They're way bigger than we are. There's
right,
lots of moving parts, right? And there's so many, many people involved.
yeah. Well, and we know that there's an average of, say, 10 to 14 or 15 people who influence uh,
Right.
a complex sale. And so you have to find those people and get to know all of them or most of them. So you start with who you know, the first people you meet, and ask them who else would be impacted by this kind of a decision, or who else needs to be involved. There's a lot of talk about the buyer's journey and how salespeople need to reflect on the buyer's journey. I believe that most of the time in complex sales, there isn't a buyer's journey. I think these are people who don't necessarily know each other. They rarely
Don't
buy
know the
something
journey,
like
right?
this,
They
right?
don't know how
They
to
don't
work
have
with
a
each other.
journey. So
Yeah.
they need the salesperson to lead it. You need
Yes,
to be assertively leading it and explain to them what it's going to take to get to a decision. Otherwise, it's hopeless. They'll try to do it, but they won't have the authority or they won't have the scope to make it happen if it's a big sale. So I think there is a journey, but I think it's the salesperson that has to lead the journey. The most
right.
important part of the journey is finding all the people who are going to influence the sale and then matching some of them up with your SMEs. That's where the SMEs come in. Because if they have an IT person on the team, they want to meet an IT person from your company. And likewise, anybody in training or somebody who's in finance, and then even the lawyers, it's a big deal. They get involved at the
That's
end.
right.
You just as soon have them involved a little sooner so they know it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because sellers think that people know how to buy from them, right? And the truth is that they may have never in their lifetime purchased this thing that they're
Right,
going to purchase from you.
right.
It's either because they're younger or because their company never needed it before or
Sure,
because it didn't
exactly.
exist.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
they have no idea how to, they know what they need. They know the
yeah,
problem they're trying to fix.
yeah,
And it's your job to really understand that thoroughly, but they
yeah,
don't know exactly how to buy it. And it's
right.
complicated at these big companies to buy
Yeah,
something, even when somebody.
especially if it's any kind of a technology
Yes,
product or
yes.
service because it crosses so many
So many
disciplines
departments.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and even if you have commitment at the top, the CEOs that are listening, you all know this. You're not gonna buy something that your people don't want.
right.
So you look to your influencers and your advisors to even if you think it's a good idea, if they don't think it will play, it's a big leap for you to try to do it anyway. Why would you bother to do
Right.
that?
And the thing is that what the sales person brings, right, along with this business acumen that's so important, right? So they can just talk and converse, right?
Right.
They can converse and have a a higher level conversation, ask better questions, all of that. But then they bring the knowledge of how the last large company bought from them, that it did have to go
Exactly.
through legal, that it did have to go to purchasing,
Mm.
that the CEO ended up having to sign off. They know
Yeah,
these things and they can say, listen, with big companies like yours, to get something like this done, here's what it looks like. And they can map it all
absolutely.
out and then
Yeah,
guide that journey so that it doesn't get
yeah,
stalled.
yeah. So that's a very different kind of sales training
Yes.
for salespeople to learn how to be orchestrators of members of their team that they might not even know yet, as well as, being able to speak effectively with a number of people from different areas of the company and understanding they're the ones that need to understand who needs to be part of this and how am I going to get to them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you're in it. You're asking great questions. You're listening. You're understanding the problem thoroughly. You're getting all the right people involved. You're helping them with the journey. You're mapping it out for them because
Right.
they may not know what it is. And they may have to go ask other people to find out, oh, well, legal need to look at this. I didn't even think of that. What about
Yeah.
IT? We better bring them in pretty early to make sure there's no complexities we
Sure.
didn't think of,
Exactly. Yeah.
integration issues, all of that. All right. So we're getting closer, right? We're bringing everybody together. What role is the CEO playing at this point and the other senior leaders?
I think that you want to have large account salespeople who know when to bring you in because you don't want to be paying attention to this every day. It's not your job. However, it is your job to be available, to be in a meeting with a senior person, to help mitigate their fears because they want to know you. They
Yes.
want to know if something's going wrong, who can I pick up the phone and talk to that can do something? So they need to know you're there. They need to know you know what the sales team is doing. They very much need to know that. And there may be times when you need to sit in on a meeting or have a meeting. Also, your salesperson needs to be strong enough to tell you, say this and don't say that when you're in
Right.
that meeting, because they're in charge of the meeting and they know what they need you to do and what they don't need you to do, what might have been already covered. So it's very helpful as the CEO if you concede leadership to the salesperson in this kind of meeting or in that context, because sometimes the CEOs get in there and they talk too much, or they talk about things that have already been covered, or things that the salespeople don't want to talk about yet.
And this is
All
why the
meaning well, but
right, but
just taking over like we do.
that's right, and it's that makes these prep meetings so important,
Yeah,
right? So if you're
exactly.
going to do whale hunting, you are going to have to put aside the time with your team to plan before the meeting. So, all right, here's what this meeting is about. Here's what we've already done, what we covered. Here's what we're going to need to confirm. Here's the new information we need to find out. Here's the types of questions we're asking. CEO, I'd like you to do this. I'm going to make the introductions. I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to ask you to say these a few words. Then I'm going to, throw it over
Right.
to our sales engineer who's going to
Yeah.
explain this. And I teach them. It's like tossing a ball gently to another person. Okay,
Mhm.
so don't expect that somebody knows when it's their time to talk.
Right.
Plan ahead, tell them what role you want them to play, what questions you want them to ask, or what you want them to say and deliver. And then when it's their turn, since you're the orchestrator as the seller, right? You're the orchestrator, you say, Barb is now going to talk to you about, right? I toss her the ball gently. And then when Barb is done, she'll either toss it back to me, or if she knows it goes to the subject matter expert next, she'll toss it to them. And when it's the CEO's turn, it's the same thing. Our CEO, Ben, is now going to talk about, right? So you're really truly orchestrating the meeting. It won't work if you haven't practiced, if you haven't sat with your team, planned, and actually practiced what
Absolutely.
you do.
Absolutely. Yep, that's so true. Yep,
Yeah, and I just see that as such a huge deficit. So if you're going to hunt whales, remember you're going to have time for these planning meetings. All right, so
exactly.
now we get our CEO involved at the right time and we position them properly. Don't bring your CEOs in to talk to the lower level people.
No,
You
of course
can't
not.
waste your power on it,
Yeah,
right? It's bring those CEOs
exactly.
in when the leader's going to be there. Now in a huge company, you're not probably going to get like GM's CEO to show up,
Right,
but you might
exactly.
get the general manager of that unit to show
Sure,
up, and then your CEO
absolutely.
should absolutely
Yeah,
be there, right?
yeah, exactly. Yep,
Yeah. All right, so now we're moving down the path here, and we've got everything going really smoothly, and we actually land this whale. That
yeah.
is not the end of it, Barbara, is it?
That's just the beginning, absolutely. Yeah. So we talked earlier about having an onboarding process so that your team is ready to do this work when the new whale comes on board, especially if you haven't had a whale before, or if you've had one and you had trouble meeting their expectations. Suddenly, it's a whole new group of people, because the people that you talk to who are involved in the sale, most of them won't be involved in actually receiving the services. So it's lots of new people and different people on your team. The salespeople have to move out now, except for the ones that are responsible for new business with this account. Otherwise, everybody else is moving on to something else. So it's really important for everybody in your company to know how to do this step by step. Every department that's going to touch the whale, who's the first person that's going to reach out to them, and what are they going to say? And what's the welcome message that you're going to bring? What if it takes you 4 to 6 weeks or 3 to 4 months from when
Right.
you've sold it to when you're ready to start or when they're ready to start? How are you gonna persuade them along all that time that you're involved? And who's gonna be responsible for that? So onboarding is huge, and preparation for onboarding. Many, many smaller companies really screw that up.
Oh
I've
my
seen
gosh, Barbara,
disasters. I've
seen
had
disaster.
customers get sued over the onboarding, or the difference between what they thought they bought and what they're really getting. So you have to have complete clarity on what's gonna go on to bring them on board.
You really have to take the time to set it up in advance too. So you and I have both seen this, but a story that is vivid in my mind is that they didn't hire on pace with bringing these whales on. And
Yeah,
then they had brand new people that they were trying to bring up to speed who were trying to
exactly.
help
Yeah,
these huge companies.
yeah,
And they didn't know what they were doing, not their own fault. They were
yeah,
brand new. And the customer was getting so irritated because these people who were onboarding them never knew any of the answers. They had to, oh, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll have to get back to you on that. Not that it's bad to say that, but that can't be the answer to everything. And it was
exactly,
because they
exactly.
waited
Yeah.
too long to hire. And then
Mhm.
instead of putting their most senior person on with the whale, they put the new people on, and
Yeah,
it did not work, and it was a
yeah.
disaster. So it
Mhm.
does take planning, and you do have to think about all of the pieces, and
Right.
especially onboarding, because we don't want a customer for now, we want a customer for life.
Mhm.
And so if we onboard poorly,
Exactly. Yeah.
everything, is not gonna work. So
Yep.
gosh, there's so much more here, but we are getting close to running out of time. And
Mhm.
I do want to talk a little bit about the way that people can use your services. So I know you are still doing some consulting, but you have a
Absolutely.
brand new program that you're
Yeah.
rolling out. And I'm so excited because I got to have a little peek at the very beginning and kind of watch
You
this
did,
go.
yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, we've launched what we call the Whale Hunters Institute, and it's an online learning platform for anyone involved in large account sales. That includes CEOs and sales leaders and salespeople and subject matter experts. We are adding that as a bonus to all our consulting engagements so people can get their team engaged in the Institute. And it has a series of courses and other kinds of materials that you can use. Everything that you need to learn about whale hunting, you could learn in the Institute. And my favorite part of it is a clone of me named Barbara AI, who is the sales coach. And Barbara AI knows pretty much everything I know about whale hunting. And unlike me, she can remember it instantly and synthesize. And so the clone serves as a magnificent coach to anybody enrolled in the Institute. You can ask the most sophisticated question about what do I do next in this circumstance, and I guarantee you will get a very good answer, and you will get it instantly, and it will probably be better than an answer I could give you face to face because I don't remember everything that's in all my books and all the stuff that I've ever talked with people about, but the clone does and can synthesize it instantly. So whether you would engage us as trainers and consultants to put this system in your company, you would also then put your people into the institute at our expense. Or if that's beyond what you need or want, think about bringing your sales team and others in your community into the Whale Hunters Institute. We offer a 2-week free trial. We're discounting our very low price. Our founding member price is $29 a month per person, and we're
Wow,
discounting that.
that's
We're
amazing.
discounting that for teams, and I'm the one to talk to if you want to think about getting your team in. You can reach me, Barbara at thewhalehunters.com.
Okay. Before we leave, though, I have 3 questions I want to ask you,
Yeah.
and then we'll
Okay.
put up your website as well so people know how to get to you. So here we go. A couple of rapid fire questions. I think really important stuff that our CEOs want to know. So the first one is, what is a book that every CEO should read?
Yeah. Well, I would say any book by Dan Sullivan, who is the strategic coach. He's my favorite writer about how to lead organizations. And his newest book is 10X is Easier Than 2X. It's a phenomenally good book, and every leader should read it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. All
Yeah.
right, next question. What's a podcast that you love because it makes you think differently?
Yeah. I love Lori Richardson's sales conversations with women in sales. I know you do too.
Yes,
Uh,
I do.
She has really marvelous guests all the time, and I learn a lot from everyone that she has.
It's so true because each of the women sales leaders tells their story, and it's just so fascinating. I do love that as well. All right, last question. What does every CEO need to know to win in this current marketplace?
You need to know your customers. You need to know everything you can know about them, and you need to be certain that your salespeople know them and that everything they do is directed towards fulfilling the needs of the customers.
Yes, very good. Absolutely focus on that customer. All right, so now Barbara, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at thewhalehunters.com. You can get to the Whale Hunters Institute from that homepage. You can reach me, as I said, Barbara at thewhalehunters.com. And I'd love to hear from any of you if you enjoyed this. And I think that's where you can reach me.
Absolutely, and she's on LinkedIn too.
Oh,
If you
yes,
reach
I'm
her
on
on LinkedIn
LinkedIn. Yeah.
though, the rule is
Yeah.
you have to say you met her on my show or she's not gonna
Yeah, of course.
Very good. Well, Barbara, what a pleasure to just get to hang out with you for a little while and to share all of your amazing knowledge about whale hunting with all of the CEOs out there. I can't thank you enough.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I'm really honored that you hosted me and very happy to speak with you and with your audience.
Thank you. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.